The sun had barely risen when Marcus Johnson opened his eyes on the narrow mattress he shared with his mother in the furthest corner of the temporary shelter at East Oakland Community Center. At 11 years old, Marcus already carried on his shoulders the weight of an unstable life that no child should know. He rubbed his eyes while observing his mother, Sarah, still sleeping, her face marked by exhaustion and worry even during sleep. It had been 8 months since they lost their apartment in the Fruitvale neighborhood. Sarah worked as an administrative assistant at a small construction company that went bankrupt during the pandemic. The 3 months of unemployment benefits barely covered 2 late rent payments. Then came the eviction notices, the promises of extensions that never materialized, and finally, the harsh reality of having nowhere to go. "Marcus, time to get up," whispered Sarah, waking with that maternal sixth sense. "You need to be at school by 8. Jefferson Elementary School was a 20-minute walk from the shelter. Marcus attended classes when he could, but his presence had become irregular in recent weeks. The shame of wearing the same clothes for days in a row, the hunger that distracted his thoughts, and the fatigue from nights of poor sleep made each day at school a challenge. "Do we have anything to eat?" asked Marcus, trying to ignore the rumbling of his stomach that hadn't received a complete meal since the school lunch the day before. Sarah rummaged through the small backpack where they kept their belongings. She took out a half-squashed cereal bar and divided it into 2 unequal parts, offering the larger portion to her son. Marcus noticed that she would save her part for later, or, as frequently happened, wouldn't eat anything at all. "Mom, let's divide it properly," he insisted, breaking his piece in half and returning a part to her. The Californian winter was normally mild, but this year a cold front was punishing Oakland, making the mornings particularly difficult. Marcus put on the 2 shirts he owned, the one underneath already worn out, and on top his most prized possession, a Golden State Warriors shirt with Stephen Curry's number 30, a gift from his father before he left their lives 3 years ago. After using the communal bathroom, both set out for the day ahead. Sarah would accompany Marcus to school before continuing on to another day of job hunting. Later, she would go to the local church food bank, where sometimes she could secure a meal. "Today I'm going to stop by the court after school," commented Marcus as they walked. Basketball was more than a hobby. It was his refuge. On the public courts of the neighborhood, for a few moments, he could forget the hunger and the cold. Sarah smiled, squeezing her son's hand. "Just don't stay too long. And remember to drink water at the school fountain." She knew her son was getting thinner. The donated school uniform already hung loose on his shoulders, and the dark circles under his eyes told the story he tried to hide from teachers and classmates. But she also knew that those hours dribbling an old borrowed basketball were the only moments when she saw Marcus's genuine smile. Upon reaching the school gates, Sarah adjusted her son's shirt and gave him a kiss on the forehead. "I'll pick you up here at 3, or at the Foothill Avenue court if I'm late. And Marcus," she paused, "things will get better, I promise." The boy nodded, wanting to believe his mother's words, as he watched her thin silhouette moving away on the cold sidewalk of the Oakland morning. Classes ended early that Thursday due to a teachers' meeting, and Marcus took advantage of the extra time to head to the public court at Tassafaronga Park. It wasn't the closest court to the school, but it was his favorite. Less crowded, and with a distant view of the San Francisco Bay when the sky was clear. Today, however, gray clouds hung over Oakland, promising another cold night. With the old basketball he had found abandoned months ago, Marcus practiced 3-point shots, imitating Stephen Curry's movements that he had memorized by watching occasional games through the window of an electronics store. His stomach growled, Lunch at school had been small, and the food bank had low stocks that day. But on the court, focused on basketball, Marcus found brief relief. "Good technique for someone so young," a voice commented behind him. Turning around, Marcus froze. There stood Stephen Curry, in person, wearing a discreet Warriors hoodie and a regular cap. For a moment, Marcus thought he was hallucinating due to hunger. Are you real?" he stammered, letting the ball escape from his trembling hands. Curry smiled, catching the ball before it rolled away. "Last time I checked, yes." He returned the ball to Marcus. "I'm here for a community event later. I always come early to get to know the neighborhood. What's your name?" "Marcus," the boy replied, still astonished. "Marcus Johnson." "Well, Marcus Johnson, you have a good shot. Can I see it again?" With shaky legs, Marcus positioned himself and shot. The ball hit the rim and fell out. "Nervous, huh?" Curry smiled. "Try again. Breathe before you shoot." For 20 minutes, Curry gave tips while Marcus shot, progressively relaxing in the presence of his idol. Eventually, they sat down at the edge of the court to rest. "You play very well for your age. Are you on any school team?" asked Curry. Marcus lowered his gaze. "No, I miss school a lot sometimes." "Why?" Silence hung for a few seconds before Marcus answered. My mom and I, don't have a home right now. Sometimes it's hard to go to school when we don't sleep well or..." He hesitated. "When I'm very hungry." Curry's smile faded, replaced by an expression of genuine concern. He observed the boy more carefully. The faded Warriors shirt that was too big, the shoes with holes, the evident thinness in his childish face. "How long have you been in this situation?" 8 months. My mom tries to find work every day. She's very smart. She just needs a chance." At that moment, an alarmed voice echoed across the court. "Marcus! Marcus!" Sarah was running toward them, her face a mixture of relief and concern. She stopped abruptly upon recognizing who was sitting next to her son. "My God, you're Stephen Curry," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Your son has an incredible talent for basketball." Sarah, still shocked, shook his hand. Thank you. Marcus talks about you constantly." Curry invited them to sit, and gradually, Sarah relaxed enough to share parts of her story. The lost job, the struggle for new opportunities, the nights at the shelter. "Mr. Curry," interrupted a man from the Warriors team. "The event starts in 30 minutes. Curry nodded and stood up. "I need to go, but..." He hesitated, looking at mother and son. "Can I have your contact number? I think we can continue this conversation." Sarah, confused but hopeful, wrote her number on a card he offered. "I'll call tomorrow," promised Curry, squeezing Marcus's shoulder. "Keep practicing those shots." As he walked away, Marcus and Sarah remained seated, trying to process what had just happened. The next morning began like so many others for Marcus and Sarah at the shelter, except for the occasional buzzing of the old cell phone that Sarah kept charged only for calls from potential employers. When the device vibrated with an unknown number, she answered without expectations. "Sarah Johnson? This is Brandon Payne, Stephen Curry's personal assistant." 3 days later, mother and son found themselves in a small conference room at the headquarters of Stephen and Aisha Curry's Eat, Learn, Play Foundation. Across the table were Curry himself, 2 social workers, and a representative from the Oakland Housing Authority. "Since I met Marcus and you, I can't stop thinking about your situation," began Curry, his expression reflecting genuine concern. "And, unfortunately, I know you're not the only ones facing this in Oakland." The plan they presented was comprehensive. A two-bedroom apartment available through an emergency housing program, initially for 6 months, with possibility of extension. Medical assistance for Sarah, who for months had been ignoring a persistent cough and chronic pain. And for Marcus, complete school reintegration with private tutoring to recover lost content. Sarah cried silently as she signed the documents. "I don't know how to thank you." "It's not charity," Curry gently interrupted. "It's an investment in the community. And speaking of community," he turned to Marcus, "that shot of yours still needs practice." 2 weeks later, Marcus hesitantly entered the small apartment in the Temescal neighborhood. The place was modest, basic donated furniture, walls needing paint. But to him, it seemed like a palace. He ran to the smaller bedroom, where a real bed awaited him. "This is mine?" he asked incredulously, touching the new pillow. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, merely nodded. The diagnosis of chronic bronchitis she had received at the community clinic explained her constant fatigue, and the treatment was already taking effect. The first week in the apartment was one of adaptation. Marcus would wake up at night, disoriented, looking for his mother in the dark, accustomed to the forced proximity of the shelter. Sarah faced waves of guilt and anxiety, common feelings among people who experience sudden changes after prolonged periods of insecurity. "What you're feeling is normal," explained Dr. Chen, the family therapist assigned by the program. "It's called transition anxiety. It will take time for your brain to understand that you're safe now." On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Marcus met with Curry at the Warriors training facilities for 1-hour sessions. More than basketball techniques, they talked about school, responsibilities, and how to handle pressure. "Do you know why I train so much?" Curry asked during one of the sessions. "Because talent without hard work doesn't take anyone far. It applies to basketball, to school, to everything." With the team's nutritionist, Marcus learned about proper nutrition to regain lost weight. At school, teachers noticed the change, not just in attendance, but in concentration and participation. For Sarah, the most significant change came on a rainy Tuesday, when she left her first job interview at a medical administrative center recommended by Curry's foundation. The manager, impressed with her previous experience, offered a part-time position with included training. "I got it, son," she said, as she hugged Marcus that night. "I start on Monday." Not everything was perfect. There were difficult days, bills that still worried them, nightmares about returning to the streets, Sarah's insecurity about keeping her job. Marcus faced bullying from some classmates when they discovered about his recent past on the streets. It was after one of these particularly difficult days that Curry shared with them his most ambitious idea: transforming Marcus and Sarah's experience into a pilot program for other families in similar situations. "You are not statistics," said Curry. "You are proof that with the right support, people can rebuild their lives, and Oakland has many other families who deserve that same chance." 6 months passed like a breeze. Spring arrived in Untold, Oakland, bringing not only flowers to the city's parks, but also new beginnings for Marcus and Sarah Johnson. The apartment in Temescal, previously temporary, now had permanent status thanks to the housing program that Curry's foundation had helped expand. Sarah, promoted to administrative coordinator at the medical clinic, now worked full-time with health benefits. The walls, once empty, displayed Marcus's school report card with grades that improved each quarter, next to a framed photo of him, alongside the entire Warriors team. "Your son has a natural talent for leadership," commented the coach of the youth basketball program during a local tournament where Marcus not only played but also helped organize. he inspires the other boys. It was during this tournament that a reporter from the Oakland Tribune noticed something peculiar. Stephen Curry, sitting discreetly in the bleachers, enthusiastically cheering for a youth team that did not include his own children. "I'm just supporting." "A friend," replied Curry when approached, pointing to Marcus. The resulting story, From Invisibility to Impact, How a Casual Encounter Changed Two Lives, quickly exceeded the limits of the local newspaper. In weeks, national media outlets were telling the story of Marcus and Sarah, not as a fairy tale, but as a tangible example of how structured support can transform lives. "I don't want people to see this as charity or as something exceptional," stated Curry during a press conference. "What should be exceptional is having children going hungry on the streets of one of the richest regions on the planet." The Steady Shot Initiative, a name inspired both by Curry's characteristic shot and the stability he sought to provide, was officially launched with the goal of identifying and supporting 100 families in Oakland during its first year. The program soon attracted other athletes and celebrities, expanding its reach to San Francisco and, eventually, Los Angeles, on a Saturday. Afternoon. Marcus was nervous as he entered the auditorium of Jefferson School, his former school, not as a student, but as a guest speaker to talk with other children about resilience. "6 months ago, I didn't know where I would sleep or what I would eat," he began, his voice still shy but firm. "Today, I'm here to tell you that circumstances don't define who you are or who you can become." That night, sitting in the front row of the Chase Center with his mother, Marcus watched the Warriors defeat the Lakers, not as a dreamer from the outside, but as an honored guest whose journey inspired others to see beyond the statistics and headlines about the housing crisis. "We still have a lot of work ahead," commented Sarah, observing the packed arena. "There are so many other families out there." Marcus nodded, knowing that his story was just one among thousands. But it was a beginning, a small wave of change that, as Curry had taught him about his famous three-point shots, only needed the right trajectory to reach its target.